I've heard from a lot of moms who say bed sharing cured their postpartum depression or anxiety. They said it felt really weird to be separated from their baby. And once they just sort of surrendered and brought their baby into their bed and set it all up safely and did all the right things, it just felt right. And they just felt a lot better. Their mental health was a lot better after that.
In a world obsessed with convenience and quick fixes, I'm approaching wellness differently. After healing from chronic illness by overhauling my entire life, I'm now on a mission to help women like me to thrive and not just survive. I'm Kristen, and you're listening to the OrganiMama Podcast. Hey new parents, if you're looking for an all-in-one resource to create a toxin-free baby registry, you need to grab a copy of my viral guide, OrganiBaby, which has been downloaded by thousands of parents since I launched it in December 2023. OrganiBaby covers what materials and ingredients to avoid in baby items, what materials and ingredients to look for, safe and recommended baby brands, and everything I personally have on hand for my own babies. OrganiBaby is organized into the same exact categories as Babylist, so creating a toxin-free baby registry has literally never been easier. OrganiMama Podcast listeners can get 20% off OrganiBaby with code PODCAST, and the link for OrganiBaby is down in today's show notes. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the OrganiMama Podcast. Today, we are talking about all things bed sharing and co-sleeping with Tiffany Belanger, who is a co-sleeping expert. I'm so excited to have her on the show today. Tiffany attended UCLA and had ventured in the film and television industry prior to parenthood. She was shocked at how difficult it was to find reliable information about safe co-sleeping when her newborn would not sleep in his bassinet. After 2 years of research and real-life trial and error, she founded Co-Sleepy to help other parents keep their babies safe in their beds. Tiffany's work resonated with parents across the world, and it didn't take long for her Instagram page to grow by the tens of thousands and become the largest community of co-sleeping parents on the web. She is a frequent guest on podcasts and blogs and has been interviewed by the media several times as a representative for the educated millennial parent who's decided to go against the standard advice. Just my type of girl. So welcome so much, Tiffany. We're really excited to have you on the podcast today.
Thank you. I'm super excited to be here.
Awesome. Well, we heard a little bit about your story and your background of what got you into this, but can you break it down a little bit more for the listeners on what specifically were you having trouble with your son in regarding to not sleeping in his bassinet?
Okay. Yes. So this was back in 2018. And yes, was in Los Angeles doing my thing. And I sort of just thought that I could have a baby and add him to my life and keep carrying on as normal, as usual, But as probably so many of your listeners know, and you too, your life completely changes and you have no idea. You cannot predict that beforehand. So in my case, I had this beautiful, expensive, non-toxic crib that I had researched beforehand, and I assumed he would sleep in it and he'd love it. But he wouldn't sleep unless he was on my chest or in my arms or my husband's. But that presented us with a really big problem in the middle of the night and those first few nights. Just anytime we put him down, he would start screaming. And I don't know if other parents, they just sort of like power through that. But for us, we could not bear to just let him lie in the bassinet screaming. So we would pick him up, and we really quickly realized that we needed to figure out a safe way to keep him with us, because that was the only way he'd sleep and the only way that we would sleep. Mm-hmm. So again, this was 2018. And so Instagram wasn't like a search engine like it is now. So when I searched for things like how to sleep with my baby in my bed or co-sleeping, once I figured out that term, but that even took a few days to figure out the term for co-sleeping. I looked on social media, I looked on Google, and the only things I found were like horror stories, like really scary, fear-mongering things. And so it took me weeks to figure out how to do it safely. Basically, I had to dig and find out how people in other countries safely co-sleep, because it's the norm around the world. And so once I found that out and set up my bed in a safe way, and gradually got more and more confident as the nights went on, that's when I started Co-Sleepy, because I was like, it's not okay. It's not fair for the average parent to spend weeks stressing out about this stuff or accidentally putting their baby in a dangerous situation or setup because they can't find the resources. Yep. So I started, it wasn't too long after I started a blog and I started an Instagram page, and I just sort of felt like it was my mission just to get this safety information out there, just so I can save parents time. So yeah, that's how it all began. And it's been a really fun ride since then. And I had another son in 2020. And so it's just so bizarre. Like before this, I was working in Los Angeles and I thought I would work in Hollywood and do all that stuff. And so it took me a while even to decide to have a child back then.
Yeah.
And so here I am now, and I feel like my life's work is this.
Yeah.
And so, you know what I mean? It's just so funny how life turns out sometimes.
And I feel like it must have been especially a unique experience for you, because I live in the Midwest where people have a certain way of like thinking or doing things, generally speaking. But California, I also have family that lives out there. I'm sure that was a challenging experience for you to like want to question the norm and find people that were like-minded.
Yes, I had a group of people who were working with me, like my previous coworkers, and they, as far as I could tell, they all did sleep training. And it was sort of just like, this is just what you do because you have to work. You have to go back to work in a few months. You know what I mean? And
Sure.
they didn't really talk about it too much. I didn't, as far as I could tell, there was no one in my friends or family group, who co-slept. And it was really hard for me in the beginning because I felt like, I don't know, I just felt embarrassed, or like I was doing something wrong, or like there was something wrong with my baby. Like, why couldn't he sleep in a bassinet if everybody else could? But since I've been doing this work so long now, I can tell you that most babies don't like the bassinet, and a lot of parents don't want to talk about these things, even to their closest friends or family. And so people are co-sleeping, but they're not talking about it. And so I'm just saying to your listeners, if you've been secretly co-sleeping, you are not the only one. I promise you.
Yeah. And I think something that's really, it's just incredible that this is a conversation that you are initiating for people to have, rather than feeling like they can't say anything to their friends, to the internet, or to their pediatrician. But I think like something to recognize, and we'll definitely talk about this in the next little bit here, is that a lot of parents who are bed sharing or co-sleeping are doing so secretly and unsafely because they haven't learned how to do it in a way that's safe. And they don't want to talk about it. So they don't want to ask anyone else for help or even necessarily Google it because they're afraid to even look it up or admit that they're doing it. Because all they've been told is that you'll kill your baby if you have them in your bed.
Yeah. And sometimes their parents are brave enough in the beginning to tell their pediatrician what's going on. And if they get yelled at or they get terrified by what the doctor says, they're not going to bring it up the next time.
Yeah.
And they probably won't bring it up to their friends or family. And so it's just like, that's not helping. What would be helpful is if the pediatrician gave you a piece of paper that said, it's not ideal to co-sleep. Please try to get your baby to sleep in the bassinet. But if you have no other choice, and this is the only way you guys can sleep, here are the 10 things you can do to make it safe.
Yes.
Like that would literally save lives.
Yes.
If they did that.
Yes.
So,
yeah, oh my gosh, we have so much to unpack here. The first thing I want to go back and get your opinion on is something you mentioned a couple minutes ago, which is sleep training. Obviously, this is a hot topic among parents, and I realize that there is going to be people who are immediately on guard when I bring up that term. So I just want to lower everyone's defenses right now and say that this conversation is had with the utmost empathy for you wherever you're at as a parent, whatever choices you've made in the past or what choices you're considering for the future. I know for myself, and I'm sure this is true of you as well, Tiffany, there are so many factors that play into what decisions you make as a parent. And I just want to extend so much love and grace. But I think it is also important to examine all sides of an argument or all sides of an option and just have people weigh out the pros and cons. So really quickly, let's talk about sleep training. So this holds a lot of different definitions for people. Some people, when they hear sleep training, they're assuming cry it out method, where you put your baby in their crib and then you leave the room and then they cry, and they might even cry so hard that they vomit. And then you stand outside their door feeling heartbroken for an hour or 2 hours until they finally exhaust themselves and fall asleep sobbing. And then you try this for maybe a few nights until they finally realize you're not coming back. And then you've quote unquote sleep trained them, and then they'll just lay down and go to sleep in their crib. For other people, sleep training might mean something different than that, but it still involves like putting your baby down in their crib repeatedly or in their bassinet repeatedly and trying to teach them to quote unquote self-soothe to try and get them comfortable with falling asleep on their own. So first of all, I would love to just hear, what are your thoughts on this kind of overall idea of like training your baby to self-soothe and sleeping in a separate space from mom and dad, and what the biological implications are there?
Yes. Now I understand where you and I are in America, and there's not a lot of maternity time off, paid leave after you have a baby. There's so many other issues here, right? It's not black and white. But I do want to say that for the majority of human history, the vast majority, moms and their babies slept side by side. They slept together and they breastfed on and off throughout the night. And I don't know if you've ever nursed your baby and fallen asleep. It can happen while you're asleep. And that's how we were designed, because it makes sense, especially in those very early months when babies are just so incredibly helpless. They can barely like roll their heads or move their arms, like flail. Like they need us. We need to be right next to them, and they need to drink a lot of milk in those early weeks and months, right? So it just makes sense. So now fast forward to 2025, and because of this society, this world we live in, moms aren't given the support that they need to do that, right? So a lot of them think, I have to sleep train. I have to go back to work, or, you know what I mean? And because their pediatricians aren't giving them any information on safe bed sharing, they think that's the only option. And so I agree with you that I want to show so much grace and compassion to anybody listening to this who has sleep trained or is thinking about it or doing it right now. I understand why. But I do also want you to know that there's other things you can do. Like, for example, a lot of parents who work full-time jobs choose to bed share because it helps them reconnect with their baby after they've been gone all day. And at least they have the night with their baby. Because if they had to put their baby in the crib at 7 p.m. and the baby was going to sleep till 7 a.m., they wouldn't really even get to see them, maybe for like an hour when they got home from work.
Yep.
So like you can bed share if you're a stay-at-home mom. You can bed share if you are the CEO of a Fortune 500 company. Like if it works for you, you can do it and your family can thrive that way. So I just want people to know that there are other options, and that humans biologically, we weren't designed to sleep separately. And so while we can change as humans, we can change our routines or patterns or like what's normal, we can't change our biology and our DNA. Like this is how we are designed. So just think about it.
Yeah. It's amazing. It really is. And I would love for you to touch on, okay, so the actual biological differences for baby and mother to sleep together versus apart. Can you just explain what are some of the really cool biological things that happen when a baby is sleeping in close proximity to their mother?
Well, the mom and the baby sleep in a lighter stage of sleep, right? Which is, some people are probably like, no, I want them to be out. I want them in a heavy sleep. But in the beginning, when SIDS is a possibility and a risk, you want your baby to be in a light sleep so that they can easily wake up and arouse. Like if they're overheating or their mouth or nose gets covered. Like, again, we were designed this way. Yes. We're supposed to sleep in the beginning. We're supposed to sleep very lightly so we can wake up frequently. And so the breast milk, nursing on and off throughout the night, keeps babies and their moms in a light sleep. So that's very protective. So if you have a really young baby and they're waking up all the time, I understand it is incredibly frustrating, but feel good that this is what they were designed to do. And it shows that they are able to wake up. Like that's what they think. A lot of researchers think that's one of the problems or the things with SIDS is that a baby needs to wake up. Let's say they're overheating and they can't. Like maybe because they were placed on their tummy, and when you sleep on your tummy, you sleep heavier in a deeper sleep. So that's why back in the 80s and 90s, they said, nope, put your baby on their back because it helps them sleep lighter. So, and then also if you are concerned about your breastfeeding relationship with your baby or you want to breastfeed more, bed sharing really helps with that. Research shows that you'll be breastfeeding more throughout the night, like more sessions. They also show that it also shows that moms breastfeed over a longer period of time, like months and years, when they're sleeping next to their baby, instead of like having to get up and go over there and sit in the rocking chair. And that's really hard. And so it makes sense why a lot of moms who have to do that, they don't breastfeed for nearly as long as the moms who are just lying next to their baby and they can go on their side. I call it the cuddle curl position, but it's sort of like the side lying breastfeeding position. And just, as we said earlier, you could just fall back asleep as your baby's nursing.
Sure. And I think it's important to note too, like as we're having this conversation, like both me and you, Tiffany, we're going to make some like generalizations about like, oh, it'll be this way or it can be this way. And I think it's also important to note that there are exceptions to the generalizations of like premature babies or babies who are really struggling with oral ties and they're having a difficult time breastfeeding, or they're really tight and they can't lay on their side and nurse. So there are like external factors that can complicate some of these things. I personally have experienced some of that. Like with my second born, we bed shared from day one and we did chest sleeping. And I'm going to have you talk about that, Tiffany. But we did chest sleeping. And as much as I wanted to roll him over into the cuddle curl to nurse for the first couple weeks, he was too tight to be able to latch on his side. And so for the first couple weeks, I had to sit up in bed and turn a light on to stay awake because I knew that falling asleep, sitting up like that wouldn't have been safe. And so and if you've been there, like if you're a mom who has nursed a newborn, you know, like the sheer deprivation that you're experiencing when you're waking up 3, 4, 5, 6 times during the night to nurse your baby. And just like sometimes that first cry, that just dread that comes over you of like, oh my gosh, I have to like pry my eyes open. I don't want to be on my phone right now, but I literally have to be on my phone to try and stay awake or whatever is happening. Like, if you've been there, you know that like those have been some of the darkest moments of my life, but it does get better. And like it gets better quicker when we bed share. At least for me, that has been my experience. Because with my first, we chose to do a bassinet until she was 4 months old. And I slept so poorly for those first 4 months. I was literally constantly leaning over to pop her pacifier back in because she was so noisy and crying all the time. And then doing safe bed sharing from day one with my second was a completely different experience. Even though I still had to like sit up and turn the light on to feed him for the first like 2 weeks or so. Eventually with like chiropractic care and myofascial therapy, he loosened up and was able to do like the sideline nursing and the cuddle curl for nursing. And then it's just this really amazing thing where you actually latch your baby and you can fall back asleep. And it gets better. So just again, like I know what it's like to have those moments of like, I literally cannot keep my eyes open another second. And you maybe even have these thoughts of like, maybe we should supplement with formula so that my partner can get up and feed the baby a bottle and I can sleep more. And like, I just want to encourage you that it does get better. And if you're opting for safe bed sharing, you might be surprised at how much more sleep you get, even though you're in a lighter state of sleep.
Exactly. And so that is such a good point. Like a lot of moms at the beginning, because they are so terrified of bed sharing because of what they've heard on the news or from the doctors or whatever, they'll go onto the sofa or the couch or the rocking chair. And it's just not humanly possible sometimes to stay awake. If this is like the 6th time you've woken up and it's 4 a.m., you will probably fall asleep. And so I just encourage people just to go onto their mattress, clear everything out of the way, like pillows and blankets and all that stuff, and nurse your baby there. Because if the worst happens and you fall asleep and your baby sort of slides out of your arms, they're just going to land on the mattress beside you instead of falling all the way to the floor or getting kind of trapped between the sofa cushions or something like that. So it's like a mental shift that people have to make because they're just so against bed sharing. But the bed is actually so much safer than the couch.
Yeah. Okay. So let's talk about this. What are some of the main risks that come from sleeping with your baby and how can you remedy them?
Okay, so suffocation is a big one. And again, these are risks that your baby could have in their crib or bassinet. If you filled their crib with a blanket and pillows, same thing. So you just want to make sure your mattress is clear of soft, fluffy things like pillows, blankets, stuffies, things like that. And if you're lying in the cuddle curl position on your side, you can make sure that the blanket only goes up to your waist. It will not be near your baby at all, and you don't have to worry about it, but you can keep your legs warm. So there's like little techniques and stuff that I talk about that to help make bed sharing more comfortable, because the goal isn't for you to suffer through the whole night. Yeah. Like it's like what you were saying, just to make everything easier. It will never be perfect because nothing in life is, but it can make your nights much easier.
Yeah.
So suffocation, and another risk that a baby could have anywhere in a crib is entrapment. And that's if they sort of get wedged between a gap, like let's say the mattress and the wall, or in their crib against the railing in their mattress. If they get wedged or stuck in a way where their mouth or nose are covered, that's dangerous.
Yep.
So you want to, I call it packing the gaps. That's where you roll up, like, I'm sure you're an expert on this, but you roll up like towels or baby blankets really tightly, and you just wedge them in the gap. Yep. So there's no way your baby can get down in there. So, and I do have a free guide on this that we can link to, where I go over all these things. And I always say it's not rocket science. Like, there are things you need to do, and you need to take all this seriously. Like, don't be lax with the safety stuff.
Yes.
But it's not rocket science.
Yes.
Most people can figure out a way to sort of set up their bed or the whole room. Like, if you do a floor bed, you want to make sure you safety proof the whole room. But most people can figure out a way to do it, to make it safe.
Yes, absolutely. So. And okay, so what do you say to people who look at your information or hear like you talk about safe bed sharing, and they say, well, I'm a really restless sleeper and I'm worried that I would roll over onto my baby? What would you say to that?
So first, I would never want to like go against a mom's intuition. If she really doesn't feel safe doing it, or she knows herself, she's either very restless or she's like a really deep sleeper, even when she's sober, then I say, okay, good. Trust your instinct. Like, let's set up a safe co-sleeping situation, not bed sharing. Because see, there's different ways to co-sleep. Like, you could have a sidecar crib attached to your bed. You could have the bassinet or co-sleeper sort of like right next to your bed, like what you did in the beginning with your first. You could have 2 floor beds like in the same room but close by. Like, those are all considered co-sleeping. Mm-hmm. But we're kind of, I think right now we're talking about bed sharing.
Yes.
Specifically, right?
Yeah.
So there are many more safety considerations for bed sharing. So, but if it's an average mom who's not super restless or like a heavy sleeper, but she's just kind of worried about it, I would really encourage her to sleep in the cuddle curl position, which means she's on her side, and she can either have her partner lying behind her, like spooning her or going back to back, or she could put a big pillow, wedge it sort of behind her back to keep her upright on her side. And also, if you put a pillow between your knees, it'll really help you with hip pain.
Yes.
But it'll also sort of keep you in that position. It's really hard to just like roll over on your back if you have all these pillows or your partner behind you. And then as far as rolling forward onto your baby, you can't do that when your knees are bent out in front of you. So, and if you don't believe me, get down on the floor right now and try it. Like, get on your side with your knees bent in front of you and pretend you want to fall all the way flat forward in front of your body. And you can't, your knees are blocking you. And so the cuddle curl has been observed by researchers like all over the world in all sorts of different cultures. Moms everywhere do it instinctually. And I'm sure you would too. Like, if you were in a situation like in the airport and your flight got delayed and you had to sleep over all night at the airport, I would guess that you would like kind of create a space for yourself on the ground and lie next to your baby. Like, you might also keep them on your chest if you could do that. But it seems like most moms, at least researchers have said, it seems like they like to sort of face them, keep them right there, sort of in a little pocket, like underneath their arm. And your lower arm, by the way, will block your baby from the head of the bed and your pillow. It's just like they're in this safe little pocket.
Yeah.
And
you kind of make like a little crib with your body, basically.
Exactly.
Now, what would you say? Because I know these are some of the common like arguments that I hear, and I'm sure you hear these all the time too. What would you say to somebody who's like, well, I'm concerned that my baby would smash their face into my body and suffocate on me? What would you say to that?
When you're sleeping beside them or when they're on you?
Yeah, when you're in the cuddle curl.
Well, yeah, I've looked into this a little bit because I do get this question. And again, if you feel like you have really big breasts or something, you're like, I'm going to smother them, I'm just so worried, or my baby really likes to like burrow into me, then fine, trust that little voice inside of you and change something, switch your setup or something like that. But for the average mom, just remember that this is how humans have been sleeping for our whole history. And even the way your breasts are shaped, like when you're on your side, like it's not like a big wall or a pillow in their face. Like there's air can go through, and you know what I mean? Like,
yes.
Also there is some research about carbon dioxide too. It's like
Yes.
the moms. Okay, good. You're familiar with it. But
Yeah.
like some carbon dioxide is good for the baby because it again helps them sleep in a lighter stage of sleep and arouse easily. So I know some people are afraid of carbon dioxide, and I totally understand, but the average amount that the mom is, as she's sleeping and breathing, and their baby's face, again, it's not up where the mom's face is, it's down like chest level.
Mm-hmm.
They're not getting that much. And ideally they'll be on their back. Like a lot of babies will fall asleep on their side, and that's okay because they'll usually fall back at some point. The thing you want to worry about is you don't want your baby on their front.
Mm-hmm. At what age would you say it's okay to let your baby flip over onto their belly?
So this is sort of like a hot topic on Instagram because we don't have any specific research on this.
Yeah.
But so the rule of thumb that I'm sure everybody here's heard from their doctor and everyone is that once your baby can roll both ways confidently, you can let them sleep on their tummy if that's like how they end up later on in the night.
Mm-hmm.
But just keep in mind that that rule of thumb is about babies in cribs.
Yep.
There are no rule of thumbs from doctors about bed sharing because doctors are, not every doctor, but many pediatricians don't even want to discuss it.
Yep.
So people who say, my baby can roll this way and that way, so I'm going to let them sleep next to me on my bed on their tummy. If I get really worried about that, because some babies are able to roll at 4 or 5 months, and that is like the peak time when the risk for SIDS is the highest.
Yeah.
After 6 months, the risk really drops and goes down.
Yes.
But that's like the most kind of critical time. And so if you're letting your baby sleep on their tummy, again, that makes them go in a heavier sleep.
Yes.
And it's not a really hard, rock hard, firm crib mattress. It's an adult mattress. And it should be firm, but it's never going to be as firm as a crib mattress.
Yes.
You know what I mean? So I personally say at least through their first birthday, when SIDS is no longer a risk, and they should be developmentally strong enough where if they're right up against your body and their face kind of gets stuck or it's hard, they could move. But it's just, it's hard to move a big head. They have big heads and little thin necks.
They're top heavy.
And it's hard. Yeah. On a softer mattress, it's hard to move it. And so that's why crib mattresses are so incredibly hard. It's to help them move. So that's my own thought. But I also I call myself a safety captain. Like I am hardcore about safety, knowing that not everybody's going to do it perfectly every single night.
Yep.
It's up to every parent to make their own decisions. But I just want to at least present the most conservative, like this is how you can be really confident that it's safe.
And I so appreciate that. And I think it's also, so good of you to acknowledge that like ultimately the choice is up to the parent and their own intuition. And like moms, I just want to remind and encourage you. I know you've heard this, but like nothing beats your own intuition. So if there's something about like your bed sharing setup that is raising a red flag for you, lean into that. And if there's something that you feel like, oh, most people say I shouldn't do this, but I just know that it's working well for us and this is how we're sleeping well, like listen to that, it is important to look at the research and what information is out there, but also moms and babies have been sleeping together, for all of history, like Tiffany said. And like, I'll just give one example here that we were just talking about. And I just want to preface by saying, just because I did this does not mean you should do this. However, my son, I let him roll over onto his belly and sleep on his belly from 9 months onward. And I felt confident in that because of how strong he was in turning both directions. And he would often flip back onto his back in the night, back onto his belly. So I was confident that he would turn if he was uncomfortable or couldn't breathe or something. And I also sleep in a pretty light state during bed sharing. I get plenty of sleep, but I'm always aware of where baby is. And we keep a light on in our room so I can always see him. And so for all of those reasons, I felt comfortable with letting him sleep on his belly at 9 months in our bed. And another factor there is we knew we had a very firm adult mattress of like, when you look at the range of like softness of adult mattresses, ours was pretty firm. And so for all of those reasons, I felt okay with it at 9 months. But again, just because I did that doesn't mean you should or that you would be comfortable with it. Just know that there's a range of like normal and what parents will choose.
Yeah. And this is a great example of how Instagram isn't a perfect system, sort of like you can't really go by what people like me say on Instagram, because how could I make a post that possibly described what you just described,
Yeah.
but like, and also spoke to the parents who want to allow this at 4 or 5 months. Like there's just so many complexities, and it really depends on your baby and the mom and your mattress and the whole setup and your family's like whole history and health. And there's just too many factors to be able to put it all nicely in a beautiful Instagram post.
Yeah.
So I love what you said. And thank you so much for sharing that with us, because I think it just shows that like, yeah, 9 months, that is very different than 4 months. And I'm so glad that you weighed all the options or the facts, and you made the best decision, and then you stood by it.
Yeah. And another like group of people that I want to acknowledge that are probably listening to this right now are those of you who have either, somebody who lost a child due to bed sharing, or maybe you are an emergency responder and you've responded to an EMS call, or you work in the emergency department at a pediatric hospital and you've seen loss of life due to bed sharing. And I just want to say, first of all, like, I'm so sorry if you've ever had to be in proximity to that kind of situation. Like, loss of life in infancy happens for so many reasons, and it can happen due to bed sharing. It can also happen to babies in cribs and in bassinets and in baby carriers. And there's risks to having a fragile, small life like that. But if you're listening to this and you're thinking, well, I kind of understand what they're saying, but at the same time, I just don't know that I could choose that based on the things I've personally seen and like the traumas that I have to navigate. Like, I completely understand that. And you are so like, it's so fine for you to feel like I just couldn't I couldn't bed share based on, a child that I know that's lost their life or whatever. But I also think it's important to recognize that you carry a certain bias with you that a lot of other people don't carry, and vice versa goes. Like if you're a confident bed sharer and you've had 8 babies and you've bed shared with all 8 of your children and you've had a great experience, you're going to be biased towards the safety of it. And you're going to probably have a hard time understanding somebody who's like, no, my best friend lost their child due to bed sharing. It's super, super unsafe. So there's a lot of bias that comes into play. And I think the healthiest place to be is somewhere in the middle of recognizing, like having a healthy fear for the fact that like life is fragile and it can be lost. And I think like Tiffany, you do such a great job of encouraging people to be as safe as possible while also prioritizing mom's mental health and mom and baby both sleeping the best that you can, but recognizing that like there's a risk for every choice you make as a parent.
Okay, quickly pausing today's conversation to ask you this. Are you ready to ditch the toxins and embrace skincare and makeup that is actually clean and really works? My absolute favorite brand is Crunchy, which has beauty products that let you feel truly good about what you put on your skin. From performance foundation to lipstick to acne and wrinkle fighting skincare, Crunchy is packed with active, non-toxic ingredients. There's no carcinogens, hormone disruptors, heavy metals, PFAS, or synthetic fragrances. It's really clean products that enhance your beauty while nurturing your skin. So whether you're going for a natural look or something bold, Crunchy has you covered, completely toxin-free. You can shop Crunchy and get a discount code in the show notes below. And now back to the conversation.
That's just life, unfortunately. But like what you were saying, even somebody who's listening to this who just says, me personally, I cannot do it for whatever reason. What if they have a friend who they find out is sleeping with their baby on the couch, like having their baby on their chest, and they just fall asleep on the couch every night? They could potentially, knowing the ways to make it safer, talk to their friend and just say, if I personally don't want to do this, and I wish that you didn't have to, but if you feel like you need to be with your baby, like that's the only way you'll sleep, please do it in a safer way. Like here's how you do it on your mattress.
Yes.
So I think no matter where you fall on the spectrum, if you just know the basic ways to do it, make it safe, you can save lives, and you can really help the mental health of your friends and family, because I'm sure those moms sleeping on the sofa, that doesn't seem like a very happy way to spend your nights, especially if they're feeling worried or guilty, or you know what I mean? So if we just all talked about this more, I really think that it could have a huge impact on us, on women especially.
Yeah. And I think the truth is like
parents are going to bed share, even if it's like fully illegal, even if like, I don't think this would happen, but even if in the United States, they like made a law and said like, we're going to call CPS on you if you bed share at all, even though like the AAP obviously doesn't recommend it, but like, let's say they made it fully illegal, parents are still going to do it because there's some parents who literally are in a situation where they're like, I won't sleep and my child will not sleep unless we do it this way. So it's either go to prison or sleep, you know, and even if like parents are some group of parents are going to be bed sharing with their babies, as is like kind of the biological norm over the course of all of history, no matter what the pediatricians say, no matter what the AAP says, no matter what the law says. And so I think it's so important for all parents, and you say this all the time, I know, Tiffany, but for all parents to know how to safely bed share, even if you never plan on doing it, because you never know the night when your baby is, I don't know, a couple weeks, a couple months old, and they just will not sleep. And you're like, well, I'm going to put them in my bed. I'm going to feel guilty about it all night long because I don't think this is safe, but I'm just going to do it. And if you are not educated on how to do it safely, you are putting your child at risk by making that choice.
Exactly. Yeah, I know. It's just so hard. Like we just have the opposite messaging coming at us all the time. Like you said, the AAP, I feel like they just don't trust. Okay, this is like a spicy take, but I just feel like they don't really trust women in general, but especially in this case to like look at all the facts and make our own informed decision.
Yep.
So they just find it easier to just make a blanket statement that co-sleeping is never safe and don't do it. And that's just so, that's just dangerous and problematic on so many levels. And so something I wanted to ask you is about your husband. Like, did you guys, how does he feel? How did he feel in the beginning when you started bed sharing with your second baby?
Yeah, that's a great question. So honestly, I would say something that's great about Nick, and a lot of my listeners are familiar with our story and our relationship, so they'll be able to affirm that this is true. But something that's really great about him is he really trusts my motherly intuition on things. There are a lot of decisions that we have made in conjunction as someone who is more holistically minded and someone who has come through the conventional medical system. And obviously he has like certain opinions that he, formed during med school or throughout his training. And he's currently in the middle of his residency training for emergency medicine. But there are certain opinions that he has that he would say like applied to the general population in his mind. But then when it comes to what we actually decide for us and our family, he really trusts like my instincts and my intuition with our kids. And I just am eternally grateful that that is his perspective. And he's always open to a, humble conversation with me. And there have been certainly things that we have disagreed on. But when it comes to bed sharing, when we first had our daughter, we both wanted her in the bassinet. I wasn't really super familiar with bed sharing. I was very scared of it because I knew of the risks of, like I had like the word SIDS and suffocation kind of going through my head. I was like, no, she needs to be in the bassinet. That's the safest thing, but we'll have her right next to the bed. And honestly, it was such a bad experience. Like she just wouldn't sleep. She would like make so many grunting noises during the night. And I literally could not sleep because I was always like waking up startled to, like look over and see if she was okay. And so eventually he actually moved her bassinet over to his side of the bed because he was like, you're not sleeping. If she actually wakes up and needs to nurse, I'm going to get her out and hand her to you. And that was slightly better, but honestly, I wanted to be close to her. And so I struggled with that mentally. And eventually at 4 months, this is actually wild. I don't know if I've ever said this online before, but we put her in her room. We tried putting her in her room to see if we would all sleep better. And newsflash, we slept terribly. Both of us slept terribly with her just literally 15 feet down the hall in her own room. We both were constantly waking up to like check a baby monitor, which we hadn't wanted to use in the first place, but we felt like we needed to. And like we slept so bad with her out there. And so then I was like, okay, I think we just need to try putting her in our bed. And it really was like a one night at a time thing. Like the first night it happened, I was like, hey babe, like I feel really guilty about this, but like, would you be okay if she slept in our bed? And his response was, if you feel comfortable with it and you look up the ways to do it safely, that's okay with me, but I don't want her next to me because I'm not sure how my body would like do with that. Cause he does turn a lot in his sleep. He's a really deep sleeper. And so he was very self-aware of being like, I don't want to be next to the baby. She was 4 months at the time. So, you know, height of that SIDS risk. But he said like, if you're comfortable with it and you feel good about doing it for like one night, that's fine with me. And one night turned into the next year and a half. But he was definitely open to it. I think now when we have conversations about it, because obviously with our second, I mentioned this already, we bed shared from day one, and I did chest sleeping, which I do want you to talk about as well, Tiffany, but we did chest sleeping from day one, and he noticed like instantly how happy I was. Within those first couple of weeks, he was like, you're sleeping great. You're doing great. And I obviously complained some, and I mentioned this about having to like sit up to nurse for a couple weeks, but then that got better and I was able to sideline nurse. And he was like, I'm sleeping great. Like you're not like, he'd be like, how many times did you guys wake up? And I would be like, oh, I don't know, 3 or 4. And he's like, I never heard it. I'm like, yeah, that's because we're just chilling over here. But now when we talk about it and we discuss, you know, even like emergency doctors who will say like, don't bed share. Like I hear stories all the time from, you know, ER docs, especially pediatric ER docs, who will say like, you know, some of the worst cases of my life are those like 6 a.m., you know, EMS calls from parents that have like suffocated their child in their bed and all that stuff. And I'm like, so like, I'll ask him, I'll be like, what do you think about that? Like, are you still cool with us doing what we're doing? And he was like, yeah, he said, from my perspective, from what I know, the majority of those suffocation from bed sharing cases are because the parents were intoxicated with drugs or alcohol. And I think that's just a really important thing to make note of, is like your risk of harming your child in your bed is so much higher if there are substances involved.
Oh, yeah.
And so just purely, like even without all of the other safety factors, just purely by not drinking and not smoking, your risk of anything happening is so low. And he like is super aware of that. And he's like, honestly, like as long as we have no substances, which neither of us are smokers and we basically never drink anymore. And so with that not being a factor, I don't think he's concerned at all. And he's like, I trust you, you know what you're doing, and I'm cool with it. And if there's any other professionals in my, you know, line of work that have a problem with it, then that's on them. And I don't agree with that. So
yeah. I mean, research shows that like most of the accidents or fatalities happen on sofas, or they happen when the parents were not sober, like you said, or when they put the baby in the bed, but there was like the duvet there. They put them on a pillow or on a lounger, like DockATalk, or one of those loungers that are really like, it's like essentially a pillow. You don't want to put your baby on anything plush. It needs to be as firm of a surface as possible. So yes, that's not what you were doing at all. Yeah. So the chances that something would happen to your baby are just so slim.
Yeah. And then the other thing too, and confirm if you know this is true, I have heard that the level of like safety in terms of like suffocation or SIDS is even between bed sharing and crib after a baby turns 4 months. Have you heard that as well?
I haven't heard that exactly, but I think you're right. I think there is some point where they sort of like even out, but I would have to look up to see what specific study that was.
Okay. I don't even know off the top of my head. I just know that I've seen that written out a couple places and I'm like, that's interesting.
Well, I do hear very often, especially on Instagram, people giving that 4-month mark. I don't know why they pick 4 months, but a lot of them say like that's when they could sleep on their tummy, or, you know, like I think there's like the big 4-month sleep regression. Some people don't believe in regressions. I hear all these things on my feed. But for some reason, people think 4 months is sort of like a big moment. And so I'm not surprised that that's what you've heard about this.
I haven't done a deep dive, so I really don't know like the accuracy of that. But I just think it's interesting that I've seen that several places, like you said. So
yeah.
So did you go ahead?
Oh, I was just thinking when you were talking about how you felt so happy and so much better when you were bed sharing from night one with your second baby, that like I've heard from a lot of moms who say like bed sharing cured their postpartum depression or anxiety. Now, I'm sure there's probably people listening to this even who say, no, it actually made my anxiety much worse. So I'm not making a generalization, but I do know moms who they said it felt really weird to be separated from their baby. And once they just sort of surrendered and brought their baby into their bed and set it all up safely and did all the right things, but it just felt right. And they just felt a lot better. Their mental health was a lot better after that. And again, if you think about how moms and babies have been sleeping like this for all of human history, like we're getting there's chemical reactions to breastfeeding and sleeping next to your baby and cuddling with your baby, like dopamine. And so if all of a sudden moms aren't experiencing that anymore, they're not getting those hits of those good, happy chemicals, like that could affect our mental health because we're sort of expecting it. We've been experiencing that for all the previous generations.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's just, I don't know. It's a beautiful thing. And I totally agree. And I think like, considering the topic of like postpartum depression and anxiety, there can be so many factors there. And a lot of times it's like a nutrient or like a thyroid issue. And moms, like if they just truly don't feel like themselves, they really need to get labs done so that they're testing and not guessing. But just the nervous system regulation piece of it is so huge. And if you feel like your nervous system is just constantly dysregulated because you want to be in proximity with your baby all the time and you feel like you're not allowed to be, that's a problem,
Yeah.
And like we have to trust our intuition again there of just like as moms, a lot of times we want to be with our babies. And a lot of times like laying your baby down in that bassinet is a very similar feeling to like handing your baby off to somebody that you don't really know that well at a party where you're like, I really don't want to do this. And that's how it felt for me with my first, like laying her in that bassinet every night of like, I think this is the right thing I'm supposed to be doing, but I really just want to keep snuggling with her right now.
Yeah.
So there's a reason why we feel that way,
Exactly. Yes. Well said.
Yeah. Okay. A couple other things I want to ask you about. One is, so this is something that I'm not sure if we're fully aligned on, but I want to bring it up anyway, because I think it's at least something I care about a lot, but, mattresses. So, Tiffany, first of all, has a really excellent guide or PDF that you guys can grab, and we'll make sure and link it below in the show notes to test and see if your mattress is firm enough for bed sharing, because that is really important. You want to make sure if you have a baby in your bed that you don't have like super plush. And would you say, generally speaking, like memory foam is kind of a big no for bed sharing?
If you find a really firm memory foam, that could work for a while, but memory foam in general will start to sag and like create that imprint under your body. So it won't last as long as like if you spend the money on like a latex mattress.
Yes.
Those will last like a decade and there won't be like a big dip where your body is. So again, if you're in a pinch and you can only afford a firm memory foam mattress, that's fine. You have to do what, that's what you have to do, but just know that it probably won't last very long and you'll need to buy a new one soon,
Yeah. So mattresses are a really important topic for me, as probably all my listeners know. Mattresses are something I talk about a lot, not just in terms of like firmness for bed sharing, but also like what they're made of. And she just suggested latex, which is something that I love as a bed material. Obviously, if a latex allergy runs in your family, you do want to think that through. Like if you're worried that your baby might have a latex allergy, it's a small percent of people that have that. If the latex is covered with a mattress protector and sheets, you're generally not going to need to worry about a reaction to it. But just something to keep in mind.
It's usually, I've talked to some people who have allergies and they say that it's okay if it's inside, it's the material that makes up the mattress, but the cover of the mattress, what's on the outside is like wool or whatever they've designed. And then, put on a mattress protector and a sheet and see. It just depends.
But what I wanted to also mention is the fact that there's not clear clinical evidence on this topic yet. But I do just want to bring to just something for parents to think about, is that there was this systemic review that was done in New Zealand back in like late 1900s. So probably like around like 1992 to like 2004 or something like that. For about 10 years, they looked at a variety of infant mattresses and babies born in New Zealand. And they were looking to see if the mattress that a baby was sleeping on had any impact on the amount of SIDS deaths that they saw in New Zealand. And so pretty much all of the mattresses that babies were sleeping on back during that time period contained brominated flame retardants and plastic material. And so they had, a certain level of off-gassing of chemicals that were coming from these crib mattresses, which, by the way, both of those materials are also very common in some of the more like store brand baby mattresses that are out there, like sold in the US and other like similar countries. So what they did is they actually wrapped as many, I don't even remember exactly the sample size, but they wrapped a lot of baby mattresses to prevent them from off-gassing any of those VOCs, like the flame retardants and the phthalates and parabens that were, kind of coming out, or the formaldehyde coming out of the mattresses. And the SIDS risk went from almost whatever percent it was at, I can't remember, it went to 0 for all of the babies that they wrapped the mattresses in. So it wasn't an official clinical study. It was more of just a review, or they did it under certain scenarios where they couldn't label it as an actual clinical study. But their conclusion was that the material that a mattress is made of may significantly increase a baby's SIDS risk. And obviously SIDS is complicated. From what we know, we think there may be multiple factors. Like you said, the inability to wake themselves up. But I do wonder if part of that, especially for babies who are sleeping in cribs, it has to do with the materials that are coming off of that crib. And perhaps a baby is unable to rouse themselves when they're inhaling a large amount of these toxic off-gassing chemicals from their mattress. And so for me, just as important as a firm mattress for your baby, wherever they're sleeping, whether that's a crib or a bassinet or in your bed, is also like what materials and what is off-gassing from that mattress. And unfortunately, the best non-toxic mattresses aren't necessarily affordable for everyone.
Exactly.
And so there are certain solutions. Like if you're like, well, we have a firm mattress, but it's not non-toxic, and now I'm feeling really worried about it, I would recommend getting a non-toxic mattress protector that wraps all the way around the edges, because that's going to, limit the amount of off-gassing and kind of put like a non-toxic barrier on your bed.
Or you could get a mattress topper.
Yes.
And then wrap it.
Yes, absolutely. I know that you like the brand Avocado. I love the brand Naturepedic. They have different options for whether that's like you are in the market to purchase a new mattress, or you just need something to kind of wrap your current like more toxic mattress in. I really personally really recommend doing that, especially if you're going to have your baby in your bed. Because not only are you going to be not exposed to those chemicals, your baby as well is not going to. And there is reason to think that there may be an association with mattress materials and increased risk of SIDS, even though they still need to do way more studying on this. But just something to think about when you're considering like, what mattress should I use?
Yes, I always recommend a non-toxic latex.
Yes.
But I do understand, and I get this question all the time, people can't afford it.
Yep.
And so that's why I do give other options, but I always say, as far as I can tell, that's the best option.
Yes.
Because like you said, your baby, think about how much newborns sleep. Like they're going to be lying on a mattress, maybe exposed to those chemicals or off-gassing for like, I don't know, 18 hours a day, 20 in the beginning at least. And then like if you have kids like me who are co-sleeping through like their 5th birthday or however long, like a long time, like that's a lot of chemicals.
Yes.
You know what I mean? So
yes.
So if you can invest, like I said, if you can make it happen, I'd recommend getting like a non-toxic latex mattress.
Yes.
Instead of getting a cheaper memory foam that you have to replace every 2 or 3 years.
Yeah. And that's a great thing about these non-toxic mattresses is the brands that are making them are really invested in high quality, long lasting things. And so like you said, instead of having to buy a new mattress every like 4 to 5 years, you buy a really high quality non-toxic mattress and it'll last you, maybe your entire lifetime, which is a great investment. Yeah.
We have several Avocado mattresses that I've, been given for free because I talk about them so much. And so I couldn't have afforded them on my own. So I'm just saying that. That's the truth.
Yes.
But they have all, over these 7 years, no dips, Some of them have springs like underneath the latex, and those are like all in. Sometimes some spring mattresses, like they'll just like pop out to the side, or they'll, you know what I mean? But I have no complaints about avocado, but yes, it is a very big investment. And so I understand my parents, especially who are reluctant to bed share, or they're hoping like, okay, I'll just do it for a couple of days and then they'll be back in their crib. Like until you really decide to just go all in, it's scary to make a big purchase like this.
Totally.
So I get it.
Totally. I get it too. Okay. One other thing I definitely want you to touch on is chest sleeping, because I think, if I'm not wrong, you've kind of pioneered the conversation on this. And
yeah,
let's talk about it, because obviously earlier you mentioned about how a baby sleeping on their belly encourages them to sleep deeper. So what is the difference between having your baby sleep on their belly, like on the bed, versus on their belly on your chest? And how do you recommend doing this in a way that is safe for mom and baby?
Okay, that's a really great question. So there's two main differences when your baby's sleeping prone on their tummy, but like chest to chest with you, versus on a mattress. So the first is that you should be reclined. The mom should be sort of propped up a little bit, not completely flat. And this makes it much easier for your baby to move their big, heavy head if they need to. Because of, think back to your physics class, like force, you know what I mean? Like it's just easier when you're at an angle to sort of move and get that motion going. And you can just set up your baby's head, not set it up, but position it according to the safety guidelines ticks that you would, do you know what I mean by ticks? It's like baby carrying, baby wearing. So you just want to make sure that their head is sort of like pointed up. So their chin is down on their chest, and it's pointed to the side so they can breathe. And I mean, the good thing is like you can see them. You just look down and they're right there. You can easily monitor them. And that's the second major difference, is that when babies are sleeping on their mom's chest or their dad's chest, they're getting constant inputs, like even while they're asleep and they're not consciously processing it. They're hearing your heartbeat. They're feeling your chest rise and fall, your breath, getting some of that carbon dioxide. Now that is very different than a baby face down on a mattress who's getting zero inputs. So yeah, it's just a completely different thing. And I understand why at first it seems like, why is it okay to sleep on your tummy in this way, but not on that? But they're completely different environments for your baby.
And keep going.
Oh, yeah. So when I first, again, started my Instagram page and my community was growing, I noticed I was getting so many questions about chest sleeping, but I didn't talk about it for the first couple of years because I was afraid of like liability, because I looked and there's no research done on it. We do, thankfully, thanks to Dr. James McKenna and Dr. Helen Ball and some other ones, we have like video studies that were done in a sleep lab, and we can see what moms and babies do when they're sleeping side by side and how breastfeeding works throughout the night and all these wonderful things. But nobody's done a study with a baby on their mom's chest yet. And so a lot of this stuff, I used common sense, and I interviewed Dr. Helen Ball, and I also chest slept with both of my boys. And I slowly felt like I grew in confidence and was like, I'm getting so many questions about this. It seems like the vast majority of parents in the first few weeks and months, that's where their baby wants to be. And it's kind of like a transition to get them comfortable with being on the bed next to you. And so that's when I started talking about it. And now I have a guide, like it's like an ebook, and I had Dr. Helen Ball help me write it. And it's like so popular with parents, because especially if you Google that, there's like hardly anything. For some reason, that has not really been talked about too much. But has that been your experience too, that it was like with your kids, like they were most comfortable right on you?
Oh yeah, 100%. And honestly, like my son, at the time of recording this, he's not 2 yet, and he still prefers to fall asleep. Like we put him to bed in his own room, and then he ends up in our bed, a few hours into the night. But I still rock him to sleep in a rocking chair in that position, because it's still his favorite way to fall asleep after all this time. And I just truly had the most, like, not that everything was perfect, but I really had the most magical postpartum experience with him because of chest sleeping. Like, I honestly feel like I owe all of the positive vibes I had around the 4th trimester to that, because every night when we would go to bed, I did not dread it. I looked forward to it, because I was like,
Yeah.
Doesn't matter what happened in my day today. I'm about to get the best 6 to 8 hours of snuggles right now, and I cannot wait.
Oh, yeah, I remember that. I was the same way. I always looked forward to it.
Yeah.
And that's not to say it can't be uncomfortable. Like in my guide, I talk about how to use pillows to really like help your spine stay in the right position and all these, because it can be very uncomfortable.
Yes. You feel like you can't move much.
Yeah. But I'll give you really quickly some of the basic safety guidelines for that in case anyone wants to do it for the next nap or tonight. So yes, clear out your mattress, clear it off so that there's no pillows or blankets or anything, and then prop yourself up in the middle of the mattress. If you know you want to do this long term, I highly recommend getting a wedge pillow. It just makes things way easier. But you can also just make a big pile of pillows so that you're angled. Like usually it's about 25 to 45 degrees. And it's hard to tell when you're lying there, but just see what's comfortable and make sure that when you put your baby's face on your chest, that their head is up higher in the air than their bottom. Like basically if they're at an angle, that means the weight is kind of like resting on the bottom half of their body. You know what I mean? And not their lungs. Yep. Like their legs are holding the weight. Yeah. Yep. And it'll be, like I said earlier, it'll be much easier for them to move their head if they need to. And just make sure that their face is positioned in that correct way as if you were wearing them in a sling. And then that's it. You probably want to dress a little bit lighter than usual because you guys will be feeling each other's body heat. And that's it. If they slip off, which can happen, especially when they become more mobile, they start to wiggle, it's okay. They will just fall, 10, 12 inches down to the mattress and you'll wake up and they'll be okay. That is so much safer than doing it on the sofa.
Yep. Yeah.
So
absolutely. Oh, and one other thing I was going to say, this is actually relating back to the cuddle curl, which I think I transitioned from chest sleeping to cuddle curl with my son at 4 months. Cause he wanted to chest sleep for those first 4 months and I was totally happy with it. But then he started to get a little heavy cause he was 9 pounds when he was born. So he was already a big boy. Wow. And so he started to get a little heavy for me on my chest. So I was like, okay, I think it's time to move him to the side. But one of the most common complaints that I hear, you probably do too, is like, oh, well, the cuddle curl, it's great in theory, but I get so uncomfortable. And you have tons of great advice on how to use pillows. But one of my personal best hacks is that my husband and I rotate sides of the bed every month. And so that I don't ever spend longer than 30 days laying on one side. Cause he doesn't like to have the infant in the middle of the bed. Right. Because you might say oh, we'll just flip the baby, put the baby in the middle. And then you and your spouse both sleep cuddle curling toward the baby. He didn't ever want to be next to the baby until he was probably 10 months. And so he preferred that the baby be on my side of the bed. So we just flip-flopped sides of the bed every month so that I didn't get too sore. And that was really helpful.
Yes, that is definitely the safer way, is to have the baby right next to the mom and not in between the two parents.
Yes.
So I love how just with your instincts, both of you figured it out and you did it. That is such a safe way to do it.
Yeah.
And it's so much easier on your body to switch every 30 days.
Yes.
You're brilliant.
Yeah. Cause I
so
started getting a pulled muscle on one side and I was like, I know this is from just how my arm is when I'm sleeping. So then I was like, what if we just switch sides? And then that kind of totally helped. So
yeah. Yes, I do have a free PDF with different kinds of pillows. Like your head pillow, you can buy one that's designed for side sleepers, and it just makes it so much easier.
Yes.
Just if you can, make those little investments because you deserve to be comfortable while you're doing this. It shouldn't be a torturous situation for you. You don't deserve that.
Yes. And okay, so Tiffany, can you tell the listeners what other guides do you offer to serve which purpose for parents?
Okay. So I have 2 guides that are very specific about the safety, comfort, and logistics of sleeping with your baby next to you. And the other guide is with them sleeping on your chest. But I also have a more general guide called the Bedsharing Beginner's Guide. That's how to set up your bedroom and do a nightly routine. What if you want to eat dinner and you don't want to lie down with your baby at 6 p.m.? What do you do? Where can you safely stow them? And last October, I decided to make that free because I thought everybody needs access to this information. And I just felt so wrong having it behind a paywall. Uh-huh. So I'm not going to lie, this year has been a little bit tricky financially, but it makes me so happy. Every time I see someone has accessed that guide for free, it just makes me so happy to know that I'm helping and I'm making small steps to make the world a better place. By helping moms and babies just feel happier, feel more connected, and I don't know, less anxiety.
Yes.
These are all my hopes. I hope that's what's happening. But like 15,000 people have gotten my guide for free, and that just makes me so happy.
That's incredible.
So yeah, we can link that, and you can get started tonight and create like a safe setup on your bed tonight or for the next nap. A lot of moms do this for naps too.
Mm-hmm.
So
incredible.
So yeah.
And then where can people find you on social media and online?
So on social media, I'm at CoSleepy. So just like the word co-sleep with a Y afterwards. And then my website is cosleepy.com.
Yes. And Tiffany has a lot of great visual graphics like on her Instagram page. So if you're more of like, if you're hearing this and thinking, okay, I kind of hear that, but I just can't really picture what that would look like, she's got a bunch of great visuals you can look at where she kind of demonstrates different setups and different ways to sleep with your baby safely that I think is so helpful because I haven't really seen that in other places. And I think it's just tremendously helpful for parents to see that.
Thank you. I'm so glad that I don't know if I followed you, if you followed me, like how we crossed paths, but I love following you.
Same.
I'm so glad we're friends.
Same. Well, Tiffany, thank you so much for coming on the show today. This is, I'm sure, going to be such a popular episode, especially for new or expecting parents just to kind of wrap their minds around this whole concept of safe bed sharing and co-sleeping. So thank you so much for sharing your expertise today. And guys, we will drop all of her information and her guides in the show notes. You can check them all out. But yeah, Tiffany, thanks again for being on the show.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
Absolutely. Well, we will catch you guys on the next episode of the OrganiMama Podcast. See you later.
Hey friend, thanks for listening to today's episode of the OrganiMama Podcast. If you're looking for more ways to dive deeper into low-tox living, I want to tell you about my OrganiGuides. In 2024, I wrote a series of digital guides that walks you through exactly how to rid your home of toxic possessions and chemicals, from kitchen equipment to bedding to paint to baby toys to your clothes and accessories. You'll learn exactly what materials and ingredients to avoid, what materials and ingredients are safe, and which brands and products I recommend as good, healthy options for your family. Listeners of the OrganiMama Podcast can get 20% off any of my OrganiGuides using code PODCAST, and I've linked all the guides in the show notes for you below. As always, do your best and let go of the rest. Bye for now.